mental health today here at Fish and Chips. Be right back. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to be talking about mental health and the importance of mental health because it affects a generation. Doesn't matter who you are, it affects a people. It could affect us socially, psychologically, emotional. It could depict how we feel or act. So today we have an expert here. Our expert is George P. Brooks. Welcome to the show today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me on.
All right. So tell me a little bit about mental health. How did you get into mental health? Where are you from for the people that don't know you yet?
Well, I currently reside in the DFW, but I'm originally from Memphis, Tennessee. And my experience with mental health really started about age 7. I began to notice, and my parents began to notice, that I processed emotions a little bit differently than most average 7-year-olds. And I'm blessed in the sense that during that time, you know, me being a black child with a black family, my parents were very progressively thinking at the time and felt like, okay, we need to get this looked at. We need to get this treated. We need to address this. And I didn't have to deal with the old, antiquated way that some of us think in terms of you just need to get over it. So that really began my my journey in terms of care. I got into therapy about age 9. My first serious suicide attempt was actually about age 9.
Whoa.
So that sort of began this odyssey I've been on. I was in therapy for about age 11. My diagnosis now is bipolar disorder. But back during that time, they didn't diagnose people under 18 with that. But that's what I had the whole time. So it was basically misdiagnosed, and I was treated for depression. So I was put on a series of antidepressants from about age 12 to about 24.
Okay, but wait a minute, because I can remember being about 12 years old, our families back then felt like whatever happened in the house stayed in the house.
Right.
You just bad. You had no problem, and you better not tell nobody about that. You know, so we grew up not telling people or anyone when there's something hurting us. You know, we kept it internally. You know what I mean? So how is it important? You're saying at 12 years old, you know, how important is it that families, we need to talk about this thing? And if your child is experiencing these type things, that we should take it seriously and try to provide the right help for them.
It just, you know what, I don't know what made the difference with my family. In terms of me and divulging a lot of what my trauma was, I had an extremely emotionally abusive relationship with my father. He was extremely emotionally abusive. So, you know, even though everybody in the house knew it, they knew that was likely exacerbating the chemical imbalance in my brain. We could never really delve into it because it just made it precarious to do so.
When you say emotionally abusive, do you mean like cursing you out or calling you names?
Yeah, it would happen out in public, and I can't repeat a lot of stuff he would say, but it was every day. It was to the point where I would have a panic attack when he would come in the room.
Whoa.
And I didn't speak as a child. People would ask me when I was out with him, was I mute? Because I was just so afraid of just saying the wrong thing that would set him off or doing anything that would set him off. So I was extremely quiet. I was extremely introverted. Hard to believe, as much as I run my mouth now. But that was just one of the many after effects of what happened. And let me say this, my father, he really turned the corner when my first son Josh was born, and we became very close after that. It got to be a pretty nurturing relationship. And the way I reconciled it in my mind was that he just was doing what he knew to do. He grew up hard. He grew up poor. He grew up in the streets. So I guess now I can see what he was trying to do. He was trying to make me strong, toughen me up, but he just did it the wrong way and caused me way more damage than probably what he could imagine. So in my eating disorder, I think in 8th grade I weighed about 280 pounds, close to 300. So I was an emotional eater. I would hoard food. I would eat by myself because to deal with it helped numb the pain because I always felt judged. I always felt ridiculed by everyone. And that was the one thing they did not judge. They did not ridicule. So that's what I gravitated toward. So having a mental illness, going to school and dealing with all that and dealing with poverty, and because that was about a period we lived without running water or lights for about a year. So all that compounded really caused me some issues. It was not always that way. We weren't always in poverty. We had good times economically, so I think everything balanced out. But that constant ebb and flow and up and down with someone with bipolar disorder, that's extremely disruptive to them. Especially being a teenager, especially dealing with the peer pressure at school. I never really acted up. I always made good grades when I applied myself. I always made straight A's when I applied myself. But it got to the point and got so bad to where I was having panic attacks at school. So I dropped out at about 11th grade. Instead of me going to school, there was a main library not far from school. So I just went to the library every day and just read up on just whatever I wanted to. Because I couldn't deal with the social anxiety. I couldn't deal with my own mood swings. So it made it very, very, very difficult. So when I dropped out of high school, I ended up going to college. I got an associate's degree. Started working in the tech industry, and met my wife, and I got married at about age 23. I think because that's what in my mind that was what traditionalists told us we were supposed to do: go to school, get a job, get married, start a family. So I did that, and in about 20 years ago, I had weight loss surgery. And when I had weight loss surgery, one thing that did save me was that I did try to prepare myself mentally for the effect of that, because when you have gastric bypass, people are not ready for the mental aspect of it. It's extremely jarring because you can no longer rely on food as that panacea for your problems.
Wow. So
I transitioned over into a couple years later over to a cocaine addiction, and what I recognized that was at the time was just me transposing one addiction for the other, because my addiction was rooted in my unresolved trauma, and I gravitated towards something that made me feel good on the outside, but was hurting me. Just to slow it down, the racing thoughts, and that's what it became for me. So that was pretty rough, really rough for about 8 to 10 years. During that time, I became disabled. I did not work for 10 years. I have various health issues such as diabetes, heart condition, things like that, and all that was exacerbated. And I got down to about 135, 140 pounds.
Wow.
And my normal weight at the time was about 210, 220. So marriage kind of fell apart. And during all this, my first son was born. I had a very difficult relationship with his mother. Then my son Caleb was born, and at that point, that's when me and my wife started growing apart. So I went through a traumatic divorce in 2017. At that point, I began to really follow my relationship with God, because all my life I ran from God. People will always say, "George, you're gonna preach. George, you're gonna be a minister." I've been hearing it literally ever since I was 5 or 6 years old, and I was like, "Nah, not me. Nah, that's not me. That's not what I'm about." And up until recently, that's kind of been where I was. Even when I began to recognize and foster my own relationship with God, that's where I was. Because I think that I've always yearned for a relationship with God, but I believe that it was I was looking into others to define what my relationship with God should have been.
Do you feel also too? Because I know you talked about the fact that the abuse, the emotional abuse that started from your father. Do you think in that process you were still, in a sense, looking for a father, looking for that figure, and maybe that kind of...
Really, not so much that. I don't think I've ever yearned for a father figure, because my father was my father. I think it had it not matriculated like it did, and during the kind of the second half of my life, by the time Josh was born, that we had not had that really good relationship, I think I would still be seeking that. But I ended up getting that.
Gotcha.
So I was okay. And one thing too, I tell a lot of black men this, many times we have issues with our fathers. And the one thing that I even told a friend this one time, he had a difficult relationship with his father, and I said, before that man dies, you go to him, you sit him down, and don't lambaste him for what he did or didn't do, but just tell him how you feel, drop it, and leave it there. So that way you know you did your part because you can't control how others react to what you say.
Mm-hmm.
So I got a chance to really do that with my father. That was extremely healthy thing. He ended up dying of cancer. He had liver and stomach cancer. So, you know, I went through the process of watching him go from somebody that was around 200 pounds and vibrant to somebody that was 90 pounds and couldn't move.
Wow.
And during that time, my mother had a stroke. So she had a stroke one day, and I never had a conversation with her again for 4 years. She lived 4 more years, but she couldn't speak anymore or anything like that. And I went through fractured stuff with my family. So dealing with a heavy bipolar diagnosis about age 25 and dealing with all of that really took its toll.
Wow.
So, and I think that's why I gravitated toward cocaine so much, because my father used it. So it was no big deal to me coming up. But it got pretty heavy into it. I never did anything crazy to get it. I never robbed anybody. I wasn't, I wasn't doing other things to get it, but it became to be a comfort for me. Mm-hmm. And, as bad as things got, the thought of suicide became a comfort for me. And I spoke on this maybe a couple weeks ago, that the rise of suicide in black men is really going up. And I wanted people to understand that sometimes when you're going through something, or when you're suffering long term, whether it be because you have a diagnosable mental condition or not, that thought of suicide can be a comfort. Mm-hmm. Because you always feel like if things just get too bad, I could always have that. And that's what addiction can do as well. If it gets too bad, I can do that. So I endeavor people to not judge. I think a lot of times people that deal with a mental illness or emotional illness are afraid of being judged or ridiculed. And it's so bad that sometimes we see it when it's not there. So when I really went through my divorce about end of 2017, I got sick of the addiction. I realized it was holding me back. Mm-hmm. And I started to really walk into my relationship with God. Mm-hmm.
So do you feel, you said when you got sick, you got really, really sick of it, do you feel like you were having some type of divine experience with God and understanding your purpose? And I've been so far down that, I have to look up, there has to be something better.
Yeah, and that's what it was, and that's when I really started thinking about God and His purpose for me and my purpose for myself. And God told me, hey, George, you're kind of sick of yourself right now. I feel it. I couldn't even look myself in the mirror. And when I really got sick of it and understood that the only way you can overcome addiction is to do it for you. If you cannot do it for your wife, you cannot do it for a job, you cannot do it for your kids, you have to forget all that and focus on yourself.
Exactly.
You're the one that's damaged. Yeah, you have damaged people around you, but you're the one storing the cocaine. You need to deal with yourself and your trauma. While I will always be in recovery, I will always be in therapy. That started it. And once I began to at least acknowledge my trauma in a way that not only I was able to express it, but hold myself accountable, quitting the drugs I ain't gonna say it was easy, but it made it possible. Mm-hmm. It made it to where I could walk through that door. So in my path to recovery, I began to seek resources for getting my mental health straight, getting my physical health straight. I went to the doctor. They said, George, you should be dead. Mm-hmm. You have multiple organ failure and you're walking around. We don't know how you're able to do that. And I went to some community organizations back in Memphis in the neighborhood of Fraser and tried to find resources to get back on medication. There were none. And that's when I really began to think of what I could do to help people. Because I remember that feeling of standing at that counter and a woman really wanting to help me, but she didn't have any information. There was no avenue to deal with a black man who had custody of his son, who was dealing with addiction, there were no resources there, not even in terms of information. So that's when I endeavored to start something that would make sure that no other black men had to be in that position. Mm-hmm. And while my focus is primarily black men, I help everyone. Mm-hmm. I got a call earlier today from someone in Africa needing help.
Mm-hmm. So you actually started an organization?
Right. That's what's planted the seed for it. So I think in the next couple of days, it was a Friday, I was laying on my couch in my house, and I asked God, what is my purpose? Since I'm at this point, what's my next move? And something came to me. I went to my computer and I started looking up nonprofits. And I named it Metta Association,
Metta.
METTA. Metta is a Buddhist word meaning to be inclusive.
Wow.
And I thought, okay, that's perfect. It didn't take me long. So I started setting it up. I set everything up legally and proper. And I want to say this from a business aspect. We as a people, when we endeavor to do things, we have to establish ourselves the right way. We can no longer do this piecemeal things in terms of business, because it will make sure we don't make any money. So I made sure all my I's were dotted, T's were crossed as far as setting up my nonprofit. And I started. So then I moved to Dallas. And for the past 5 years, we've gone through a pandemic. We've gone through several economic upheavals, but I've kept my nonprofit going. I do a lot of public speaking, advocacy work. We've done work with different community groups. I'm a member of the South Dallas Employment Project. We've done food drives. We've done as much as possible. But during the pandemic, it really got bad. And I had a bunch of cohorts who also had nonprofits that most of them did not survive. And looking at it now, looking back on the past 5 years, for Metta to still be an entity at all lets me know that I'm on the right path. So ever since then, I've been in therapy. I've been in recovery. It has not been easy, but I feel like because of things that I've gone through, God is positioning me to do more.
Gotcha. So what if, say I'm having some emotional issues, psychological issues, I can just call you or call your company for support?
Right.
How does that work?
Well, my contact number is 901-631-4300. If you call me and you need help, what I can do is I can do what I can in terms of Metta Association resources to help you. If I don't have resources, what I can do is point you in the right direction.
Cool. Okay, could you look right in that screen and tell them as well again, that number again?
Right. The number to reach me at Metta Association is 901-631-4300. Or you can email me at gbrooks, that's GBROOKS, at mettaassociation.org.
And George, I mean, just listening to your story, seemed like hell and back.
Right.
But God has brought you through, and now there's so much positivity in it, and you understanding your purpose, and just kind of seeing that there is hope at the end of that rainbow, of of that tunnel, rather, of everything that you endured. So I just want to thank you, and I appreciate your story, because again, so many people are suffering, and they don't understand, and sometimes it could be a psychological thing or traumas that they went on in their lives, and the fact that I can call you or email you and get some type of support or encouragement in that realm as well, that means a lot, because I can't imagine, being 12 years old, in everything that you endured and went through, and losing your mother, losing your father, suicidal things, and just then the disorders, and look at you now. You definitely do not look like what you've been through. Right. You're definitely an example of someone that does not look like your past. So I just salute you in that, and thank you for being so open and transparent, to talk about this, because I believe personally we need to talk.
Right.
We have to talk about these things. We just can't keep stuff in the house. We have to talk about this stuff and get the help that's needed. I have like a couple of group homes that deal with mental health. So I know how important it is, to the love, the compassion, the understanding, the listening to them, you know what I mean? Just and recognize that they're not alone. Right. And I think that's the most important thing. You're not alone, and that we're here for you. And for what I've heard about your agency, your foundation, y'all do excellent work, do great work. And so, guys, if any of you are suffering with any type of mental illness, psychological disorder, or just need some support, call Metta Association, get that email address, call that number. I mean, this man is just awesome. I've had him at my church speaking on mental illness, and which y'all get an opportunity to see that as well. But definitely someone that I'm close to and that I believe in. So I just want to thank you today, George, just for coming and sharing your story, and because I believe it will have a very positive impact.
Right.
It can really, really help people, because sometimes we feel like we're alone going through.
True.
And I think that's the worst feeling in the world, to feel like you're going through something but you feel by yourself, or you feel if you talk to someone about it, they're going to talk about you.
And that happens often.
Right.
Happens often. We have to, part of the reason why I feel like I can be so transparent and open is because first thing we have to do, especially as Black people, is destigmatize mental illness, to where if somebody can really talk about what's going on and not feel judged and not feel alone. Then becomes the communication, then becomes the education, then becomes the treatment. Then it's so much
it's a process.
involved. It's definitely a process, but we gotta get the ball rolling. And this is not a problem that I think is going to come to any kind of successful, I guess, management in my lifetime. It's going to be generational because it took generations for us to get to this point as a people. But I'm doing what I can right now to kind of help facilitate that.
Exactly. And I applaud you because it opens up the door for the dialogue to talk about this. And I think that's a beautiful thing right there. And I just salute you, and I'm just behind everything that you do. I see your heart in what you do, and just putting it out there for the world, for we can see ourselves and be reflective of ourselves. And it's okay if I need help. It's okay if I'm having this disorder. It's okay if I'm going through emotional struggles or issues, and that your company is there, to help, to support us. That's a beautiful thing to me.
And I want to urge people to support your nonprofits, especially during the pandemic, because there are many small nonprofits that are really doing the work. And during the pandemic, many of them faltered and kind of withered on the vine because of lack of funding. So I encourage people, donate to your nonprofits. Meta Association has a Cash App. We are taking donations. It's $ Meta Association, METTA. What those funds are used for, at least in terms of my organization, are to provide infrastructure to get things in place. Next year, we're going to be working on some things to further facilitate funding because we'll be working on bigger programs. But right now, that's what's needed it's basically like gas money.
Got you.
Okay, look at the nonprofit like the car. We got places to go, people to pick up, things to do, but we need gas money to get there.
So if we needed to donate funds again, I can send it to what, your Cash App?
Right.
And what is it again? $?
Meta Association.
Meta, which is METTA Association.
Right.
Okay.
And any donation is tax deductible. We are a registered 501c3. So, at the end of the year, if you want, you can get whatever documentation you need to claim that on your taxes. So I encourage people to donate, support. If you don't have the funds to support, prayers. Prayers. Well, I'm always taking prayers.
Cool.
So, and people's prayers have gotten me through a lot of dark times. So, it's nice if you can donate. It really helps. It really, really does. But prayers and just good thoughts and good wishes are always beneficial.
All right. Well, I want to thank you for coming on to the show and talking about this. And it's really blessed me and opened up my eyes to some things. And just knowing that I can donate and to help support in this cause, because mental illness is something that's just, people are suffering that all over the world. And they need this help. So I thank you. I thank the Meta Association. And guys, if you love this type of content, we're going to ask that you like, share, subscribe, hit that bell. All right, we'll bring you more of information as it relates to mental health. And again, I want to thank you. We have George P. Brooks with us, an expert on mental health. And I hope that you were blessed. And let us know what you think in the comments, or if you know someone that needs help, let us know. Or call the Meta Association. Again, that number again is what again, George?
901-631-4300.
There you go, guys. And thank you. And this was Fish and Chips.